Welcome to her whisper, where every story uncovers hidden truths of love and family. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the next story. And now, let me tell you a story you won't forget. What are you even doing here? You weren't invited. The words cut through the wedding reception like shattered glass. Every head swiveled toward me, eyes wide with curiosity, shock, and more than a little judgment. My son's bride, Emily, the young woman I had spent $43,000 trying to make happy, stood at the center of the ballroom, her voice dripping with contempt. For a heartbeat, I felt like the ground beneath me would give way. 67 years of holding my chin high in Charleston society. And here I was, publicly dismissed like some uninvited stranger. But instead of retreating, I forced a smile that carried all the dignity my late husband used to say I wore like a crown. "I'll leave," I said softly, my southern drawl calm and deliberate. "But before I go, I want you to meet a very special guest." From the doorway, a figure stepped forward. Marcus Rivera. The moment Emily's eyes landed on him, her face drained of color, her lips parted soundlessly, the confidence she wore like armor slipping away in an instant. The lace of her overpriced Vera Wang gown suddenly looked more like a costume than a wedding dress. And then, as though her body could no longer withstand the truth standing before her, she crumpled against the marble floor, her bouquet scattering roses across the aisle. Gasps rippled through the guests. Someone dropped a champagne glass. My son Michael, standing stiffly in his tuxedo, rushed forward, confusion shadowing his handsome face. He had no idea what storm was about to break over him. But I did, because I had orchestrated every second of it. If you're wondering how a grandmother like me, who still bakes peach cobbler on Sundays and keeps her church gloves pressed and ready, ended up staging the most scandalous wedding crash Charleston had ever seen. Let me take you back 6 months. At that time, I believed I was giving my only son the fairy tale wedding he'd always dreamed of. I emptied my late husband's life insurance, cashed in savings bonds, and even mortgaged part of my house to create what I thought would be a gift of pure love. The venue, the historic Bellamy Estate, with its sprawling magnolia gardens and sweeping antebellum balconies. The flowers, 2,000 white roses, flown in from Ecuador at $5 a stem. The dress, $12,000 of designer lace, altered 3 times to fit her just right. Every detail was perfect. At least that's what Emily told me with trembling lips and glistening eyes, claiming her family had disowned her for marrying beneath their lofty status. I believed her. My heart ached for the poor girl who said she'd given up everything for love. I even placed my grandmother's pearls, a necklace passed down through 4 generations of Thompson women, into her hands. She whispered, "You're like the mother I never had." What a performance that was. Michael, blinded by her golden hair and honey brown eyes, was head over heels. Emily seemed flawless, a pediatric nurse, a volunteer at animal shelters, a young woman who spoke of children with such longing that I dared to imagine myself rocking grandbabies within a year. She had everyone fooled, even me, at least at first. But there was always a whisper inside me, faint as the rustle of silk curtains on a humid Charleston night. Something about her didn't add up. The way her stories shifted depending on who asked the questions. The trail of half-forgotten childhood memories that never seemed to line up. The way she always carried wads of cash, dismissing credit cards as too modern. Still, Michael was happy. Happier than I'd seen him since we buried his father 3 years earlier. That alone was enough for me to silence my doubts, until the night I stumbled upon the truth that would change everything. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Before the investigators, before the secret phone calls, before the FBI agents walking through chapel doors, there was only me, a mother desperate to protect her son, a woman who had lived long enough to know when a smile hides a blade, and a grandmother who was about to risk her reputation, her savings, and her relationship with her only child to prove the truth. So, When Emily called me uninvited on the very day I had sacrificed everything for her happiness, I didn't flinch, because I knew the curtain was about to rise on the grandest performance of all. And this time, the audience would finally see her for who she really was. This is how it began. Looking back, I realize Emily swept into our lives like a southern summer breeze. Warm, sweet, and impossible to resist. For my son Michael, who had spent years buried under the grief of losing his father, she was a ray of light. She wasn't just a girlfriend. She was the answer to every prayer he thought would go unanswered. The first time he brought her home, my kitchen felt brighter. Emily sat at the oak table, laughing softly as she tasted my peach cobbler. "This is the best thing I've ever eaten," she said, touching Michael's arm like he was her entire world. Her golden hair caught the afternoon light, and her honey-brown eyes shimmered with admiration. For a widow who had spent years watching her son carry the weight of sorrow, it was like seeing him reborn. And Emily knew exactly what to say. She spoke about how she had never truly known a mother's love, how she longed for a family who would finally accept her. She painted vivid pictures of the little house with a picket fence she dreamed of, filled with the laughter of children. Her voice cracked with longing. Her eyes glistened with vulnerability. And I, against all the instincts carved into me by 67 years of living, believed her. I imagined grandchildren playing beneath the magnolia trees. I pictured Sunday dinners where Michael's eyes would shine with contentment again. I let myself believe that Emily was the miracle I had prayed for in the dark hours of the night. But lies often begin as whispers, soft and almost invisible, until they weave themselves into a suffocating net. Emily told us her wealthy parents had disowned her for marrying beneath their status. She sobbed in my arms, whispering, "You're the only family I have now." Something inside me broke open. I remembered my own early years with a harsh mother-in-law who made me feel like an intruder in my husband's family. I promised myself Emily would never feel that way under my roof. So I gave her the necklace, the pearl heirloom passed down through 4 generations of Thompson women, meant only for the woman who would truly honor our family. I placed it gently around her neck, telling myself she was already like a daughter. Michael was smitten beyond saving. He paraded Emily in front of friends, called her his miracle, and worshipped every step she took. My grown son of 32, who had always been steady, cautious, even shy with women, was suddenly transformed into a lovesick teenager. He smiled in ways I hadn't seen since before his father died, and that was enough to silence the unease that stirred quietly inside me. But then came the details that didn't fit. Emily always carried wads of cash. She dismissed credit cards as too modern, claiming she liked the old-fashioned way. When I asked about her childhood, her stories shifted. One week she spoke of growing up in Florida. Another time it was Georgia. The names of her childhood friends never matched. The schools changed depending on her audience. I told myself I was being paranoid. Michael was happy. Wasn't that all a mother should want? Yet money became another thread in the web. Emily suggested to Michael that it would be more convenient if her name was added to his bank account. He agreed, grinning like a fool. Then came the talk of life insurance, how he should increase the policy, because they were building a future together. I felt the air tighten in my chest, but I brushed it aside as nervous eagerness from a young woman wanting security. And then the wedding planning began. I poured everything I had into creating the celebration of Emily's dreams. The Bellamy estate, with its iron-wrought balconies and sprawling magnolia gardens, became ours for the weekend. 2,000 white roses arrived in refrigerated trucks, each bloom costing more than a loaf of bread. The gown, $12,000 of lace and silk altered 3 times. Every check I wrote was signed with the hope that I was securing Michael's happiness. On evenings when I drove home from vendor meetings, Charleston glowed with its familiar charm. Cobblestone streets, gas lanterns flickering in the dusk, Spanish moss draping like velvet from ancient oaks, I thought. If only his father could see this, he would be proud. And yet, in the middle of such beauty, a shadow clung to me. One night, while setting dishes in the dining room, I saw Emily in the garden, phone pressed tightly to her ear. Her body was rigid, her voice sharp. When she noticed me, she slipped the phone into her purse with a too bright smile. "Just an old friend," she said, but her eyes flickered in a way that made my stomach twist. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay awake listening to the hum of the ceiling fan, remembering that look, not the look of a nervous bride-to-be. No, it was the look of someone guarding a secret. For the first time in years, I felt that old fire stir inside me. The same fire that had carried me through hospital nights when my husband was dying of cancer. The same fire that had kept me standing when grief threatened to hollow me out. I realized I might be facing another battle, one not fought with medicine or prayers, but with cunning and resolve. Emily's love for Michael was beginning to look less like devotion and more like theater. An elaborate play staged for a very specific audience. And Michael, my sweet boy, was sitting in the front row, blind to the trap tightening around him. Still, I held my tongue. A mother's warning can sound like meddling. Michael adored her, and I feared he would turn his back on me if I voiced my suspicions. So I watched, silent, waiting, gathering scraps of doubt like puzzle pieces, until one night, when everything unraveled, not through intuition, not through suspicion, but through words I was never meant to hear. Words that slipped through a half-open bedroom door. Words that would confirm the darkest fear clawing at the edges of my heart. And in that moment I knew everything I had sacrificed, my savings, my home, my trust, might all have been part of the most sophisticated lie I had ever encountered, the perfect lie. And I vowed then and there, if Emily thought she could destroy my son and strip away what generations of my family had built, she had underestimated the wrong woman. Because I wasn't just a mother, I was a Thompson woman, and I had no intention of losing. The truth arrived not with a bang, but with a whisper. I was dropping off a box of wedding favors at Michael's apartment one evening, humming softly to myself as I balanced the stack in my arms. The door was ajar, the glow of lamplight spilling into the hallway. I expected to hear laughter or the clatter of dishes from the kitchen. Instead, I froze. Emily's voice drifted down the hall, low and sharp, like a knife cutting through silk. "Marcus, I told you not to call me on this number," she hissed. "No, the wedding is still on. Yes, I'll have access to his accounts once we're married. What do you mean you want a bigger cut? We agreed on 30%. The words sliced into me, chilling my blood. I pressed myself against the wall, my pulse thundering in my ears. The hardwood floors carried every damning syllable to me, as if the house itself wanted me to hear. "Look, the old lady's already given us over 40 grand. Emily continued, her tone dripping with irritation. "She'll probably hand us even more for a down payment on the house after the wedding. This Mark is worth at least 200,000, maybe more. No, he doesn't suspect anything. He's completely hooked. Mark. She called my son a mark. I nearly dropped the box of favors, my hands trembling so violently I could barely breathe. Somehow I crept backward, slipped out the front door, and staggered down the street. 3 blocks away, I had to pull over, gasping, because my chest felt tight enough to break. All at once, everything made sense. The cash-only habits, the changing childhood stories, the manipulative charm, the urgency to tie herself financially to Michael. It wasn't love. It was a scheme. My boy, my sweet Michael, was nothing more than prey to her. I sat there in the car, sobbing, my tears hot and bitter. I felt like a fool, the kind of fool my late husband would have warned me not to be. I had handed over money, jewelry, trust, all with a smile, while this woman plotted to gut us like fish. But then something shifted inside me. It was the same steel that had carried me through the nights when my husband battled cancer. The same resilience that had allowed me to bury him and still keep going. The fire that had dimmed in me reignited with brutal clarity. If Emily thought she could destroy my son and strip our family bare, she had chosen the wrong mother to cross. Still, I knew rage wasn't enough. Michael was hopelessly in love. If I confronted him with nothing but accusations, he would defend her. He would accuse me of jealousy, of meddling, of being unable to let go of my only child. No, I needed proof. Unshakable, undeniable proof. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of tea gone cold, staring at the dark window. Finally, with shaking hands, I opened my laptop and typed words I never thought I'd search. Private Investigator Charleston S. The next morning, I met Patricia Hayes at a quiet cafe downtown. She was a former detective, sharp-eyed and no-nonsense, the kind of woman who radiated competence. I poured out everything. The overheard phone call, the inconsistencies, my gnawing fears. Patricia listened without interruption, then leaned back. "What you're describing sounds like a classic romance scam," she said grimly. "These people are professionals. They study their targets, learn what they want to hear, and then become that person." My hands trembled as I slid a check across the table. "How long will it take for someone careless enough to use her real voice on the phone?" Patricia's mouth curved in a humorless smile. "Not long at all." 2 weeks later, Patricia called. Her voice was grave. "Linda, you'd better sit down." I gripped the counter as if it could anchor me. "Tell me." Her name isn't Emily Miller. Her real name is Sarah Collins. 29 years old. Originally from Tampa. Arrested 3 times for fraud. Convicted once. She runs cons with partners. Usually men who help her research victims. The one you overheard, Marcus Rivera, was her frequent accomplice. They were romantically involved until she conned him out of $15,000 and vanished. He's been hunting her ever since. My knees buckled. "Oh, dear God." Patricia's voice was steady. "She's been using the Emily identity for about 8 months, complete with fake social security number and fabricated employment. The pediatric nurse job. She volunteers at a free clinic occasionally. Just enough to make it look real if anyone checks." I sat down heavily, staring at the cold tea in my mug. The pearls at Emily's throat flashed before my eyes. The same pearls my grandmother had worn on her wedding day. "I need you to find Marcus Rivera," I said finally, surprising even myself. Patricia hesitated. "Linda, what are you thinking?" "I'm thinking a man who's been looking for Sarah for 2 years might be very interested in attending her wedding." Silence. Then a low whistle. "You want to bring him to the ceremony." "I want her exposed," I said firmly, my voice steadier than I felt. "Exposed in front of everyone, especially my son. I want the mask ripped off so thoroughly that even she can't put it back on." Patricia's tone carried a note of reluctant admiration. "You're tougher than you look." I almost laughed. "I've raised a son, buried a husband, and survived 67 years in the South. Toughness isn't optional. It's survival." By the time we hung up, Patricia already had Marcus's contact information ready. He was living in Atlanta, working construction. Within hours, I had the number saved in my phone, my thumb hovering over the call button. That night, I sat in silence, the house dark around me, wrestling with the enormity of what I was about to do. Part of me longed to run to Michael, to throw my arms around him, and reveal everything Patricia had uncovered. But I knew him. He was stubborn, loyal, blinded by love. He'd think I was trying to sabotage his happiness. No, this required something bigger, something undeniable. I picked up the phone. "Marcus Rivera speaking." A cautious voice answered over the clamor of construction tools. "Mr. Rivera, my name is Linda Thompson," I said, my tone cool and deliberate. "You once knew a woman named Sarah Collins. She's about to marry my son." The silence on the other end was so long, I thought the call had dropped. Then, a sharp intake of breath. "Where is she?" "In Charleston. 9 days from now." I steadied my voice. "She's already taken over $40,000 from me, and she's planning to gut my son's accounts after the wedding. I think we can help each other." Another pause, then a dark chuckle. "Lady, you have my attention." I gripped the phone tighter. My path was set now. There was no turning back. The whispers of doubt were gone, replaced by something far more dangerous. Certainty, Emily or Sarah, was a predator, and I was done being her prey. Now, I would become the hunter. Patricia was true to her word, though the waiting nearly killed me. For 7 long days, I lived in a fog of dread and anticipation. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart leapt. I kept replaying Emily's voice in my head, sharp and venomous, calling my son a mark. It haunted me in the silence of the night. Finally, the call came. "Linda," Patricia said, her voice low but steady. "We've got her. Her real name is Sarah Collins, 29 years old. Arrested 3 times, convicted once, all fraud-related. She's been living under the alias Emily Miller for 8 months. Fake social security number, falsified employment history, the pediatric nurse job, a cover. She volunteers just enough to look credible." My knees nearly gave out. I gripped the edge of my counter, staring at the steam curling up from my kettle. "And Marcus," I whispered. "He's real," Patricia confirmed. "Marcus Rivera. Construction worker now based in Atlanta. He was her partner for a while until she scammed him, too. $15,000. He's been trying to track her down ever since." I closed my eyes, exhaling shakily. "So I wasn't imagining it." "No, you weren't. Linda, you were right to call me. She's a predator, and your son is the prey." The words burned. But they were also a strange kind of relief. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't paranoid. My instincts, honed by decades of motherhood and survival, had been screaming the truth all along. "I need to speak to Marcus," I said finally. Patricia hesitated. "I've already spoken with him. He's angry, furious actually, but also wary. He doesn't trust easily, not after what she did. If I give you his number, promise me you'll keep your cool. He's not the type to be manipulated. Neither am I," I replied. That evening, after pacing the length of my kitchen 100 times, I pressed call. "Marcus Rivera," came the cautious voice. The background noise told me he was on a construction site. Metal clanging, men shouting. "Mr. Rivera," I said carefully. "My name is Linda Thompson. I believe you knew a woman named Sarah Collins. She's about to marry my son." There was silence. Then, a sharp inhale. "Where is she?" "In Charleston. 9 days from now. She's taken more than $40,000 from me already, and she's planning to drain my son's accounts after the wedding." Another silence, longer this time. Then he laughed. Dark, humorless. She always did aim high. "What do you want from me?" "I want her exposed," I said. My voice surprised me with its steadiness. Not whispered about, not suspected. I want her unmasked in front of everyone who matters. My son, my family, the 300 guests she plans to charm. I want her facade ripped apart so thoroughly she can never put it back on. For a moment, all I heard was the wind whistling through his phone. Then, "Lady, you're tougher than you sound. I've raised a son, buried a husband, and lived 67 years in the South," I said. "Toughness isn't optional. It's survival." When we hung up, I realized I was trembling. Not from fear, but from the terrible clarity of purpose. The days that followed blurred into a whirlwind of planning. Patricia provided documents, background checks, and photographs. Sarah in Birmingham posing as a cancer patient to scam a church fund. Sarah in Miami running credit card fraud. Sarah in Memphis leaving a hotel with Marcus's wallet and watch. Each image was another nail in the coffin of the girl I had once called daughter. I studied them late at night, alone at my kitchen table sipping lukewarm tea. My heart ached with every picture. Not just for what Sarah had done, but for what she had stolen. Michael's trust, his innocence, the gentle faith he still had in people. The hardest part wasn't the evidence. It was Michael. He called me one afternoon, his voice light. "Mom, Emily just picked up the final dress fitting. She looks amazing. You're going to cry when you see her walk down the aisle." My throat closed. I murmured something non-committal, forcing cheer into my tone, even as bile burned in my stomach. He had no idea that the woman he adored was a con artist planning to rob him blind. That night, I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling fan turning slowly above me. I remembered Michael as a boy, bringing me wildflowers in sticky little fists. I remembered him crying when his father died, holding onto me like a drowning man clings to driftwood. And I thought, what if I fail him now? What if she ruins him beyond repair? The weight of that thought pressed on me like stone. But then I remembered Marcus's voice, bitter, angry, but resolute. "She's not going to get away with it again," Neither of us would let her. Marcus and I spoke every evening leading up to the wedding. At first, his tone was gruff, all sharp edges and suspicion, but gradually he began to trust me. You know, he said one night, "I've been hunting her for 2 years. Never thought I'd get this close again. You deserve justice," I told him, "and my son deserves the truth. What do you want me to do? Come to the wedding?" I said simply, "When the moment is right, walk in, show her for who she really is. I'll make sure everyone is watching." He was quiet for a long time. Then, "Lady, you've got guts. Most mothers would have just begged their sons to call it off. Most mothers don't know how to play chess," I said. "They'd rather play checkers. But Sarah, Emily, is playing chess, and I intend to beat her at her own game." By the week of the wedding, my plan had taken on a life of its own. I canceled my hair appointment. I didn't bother altering my dress. I wasn't going to sit politely in the front pew, smiling for photographs. I was going to war. 3 days before the ceremony, I made a series of phone calls. One to the Bellamy estate, one to the florist, one to the caterer, one to the photographer. My voice was sweet, grandmotherly, as I explained that the bride's family would be covering the final payments. After all, they're very particular about handling their own finances, I cooed, giving them the fake number Patricia had confirmed Sarah was using for vendors. Isn't it lovely when families come together? By Saturday, those vendors would be calling a number that never answered, and Emily, Sarah, would have one more mess on her hands. It wasn't enough to expose her lies. I wanted her to drown in them. Friday evening, the phone rang. "Mrs. Thompson." Emily's voice was syrupy sweet, with just enough vulnerability to make most people lean in. "It's Emily. I just wanted to thank you for being so understanding about tomorrow. I know it must feel harsh, but not at all, dear," I interrupted smoothly. "A bride should feel completely comfortable on her wedding day." "That's very gracious of you," she said. "Michael told me you were planning a trip to Savannah for the weekend." "Classic fishing," I smiled grimly. "That's the plan. A little mother-of-the-groom getaway while you two enjoy your honeymoon." Her laugh tinkled down the line, but I heard the steel underneath. "Well, I hope you have a wonderful time. And Mrs. Thompson, once Michael and I are settled, maybe we could have lunch. I'd really like for us to be friends." The audacity nearly took my breath away, but I matched her tone. "That sounds lovely, Emily. I'm sure we'll have so much to talk about." When the call ended, I poured myself a glass of wine and raised it to my reflection in the kitchen window. "To family," I whispered, "and to justice." Saturday dawned gray and drizzly. Wedding photographers would call it romantic. Brides would call it disastrous. I woke at 5, too restless to sleep. By 9, Marcus called from a gas station just outside Charleston. "I'm here," he said. "You sure about this?" I looked at myself in the mirror, dressed in a simple black dress and my grandmother's pearls. The same pearls Emily had once admired with false gratitude. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life," I told him. There was a pause. "What if your son doesn't forgive you?" My throat tightened. "Then at least I'll know I saved him from a woman who would have destroyed him." Sometimes love means being the villain in someone else's story, until they're ready to see the truth. He let out a low whistle. "Damn, lady! You're tougher than you look." I almost smiled. "Mr. Rivera, I've survived 67 years in the South. I'm tougher than anyone thinks." As I hung up, a strange calm settled over me. The pieces were in place. The trap was set. And by the end of that day, the truth would stand in the light, whether Michael was ready to face it or not. Marcus arrived in Charleston the night before the wedding. We met at a quiet diner off Highway 17, the kind of place where the coffee tasted burnt and the booths smelled faintly of grease. It wasn't glamorous, but it was private. When he walked in, I studied him carefully. He looked older than his 30-some years, weathered by work and betrayal. His shoulders were broad, his hands calloused, his eyes dark and restless. This was a man who had been broken and patched together again with nothing but spite and survival. "Mrs. Thompson," he said, sliding into the booth across from me. "You've got guts. I'll give you that. Call me Linda," I replied, keeping my tone firm. We're partners now. The corner of his mouth curved. Partners. Funny word. Last time I had a partner, she emptied my bank account and vanished into the night. I held his gaze. That's exactly why we're here. To make sure she never does it again. For a moment, we simply studied each other. Two people from different worlds, bound together by the same enemy. Then Marcus leaned forward, lowering his voice. So how do you want to play this? The hours that followed were a blur of strategy. We laid out every step like generals before a battle. Marcus would arrive at the estate 30 minutes before the ceremony, dressed in a suit that still smelled faintly of mothballs, but gave him the look of a wedding guest. He would wait in his truck until I gave the signal. I would slip in through the garden entrance, an old path I'd memorized from venue tours. While Emily charmed guests and posed for photographs, I would remain out of sight, watching from the shadows. At the moment she walked down the aisle, I would text Marcus a single word. Now. He would enter through the main doors, his voice carrying through the chapel as he called her real name, Sarah Collins, and in that moment the facade would shatter. Public humiliation, Marcus said grimly, tracing the rim of his coffee mug. It's the only way. She's a chameleon. If you try to pull her aside in private, she'll lie her way out of it. But in front of 300 people with evidence in my hand, she won't have anywhere to run. I nodded. Exactly. We talked logistics. Where he would stand, how he would present the photographs and documents Patricia had gathered, the order in which he would reveal her crimes. Marcus insisted on bringing the old engagement ring she had stolen from him. Proof not just of her deceit, but of his personal stake in exposing her. People believe stories, he said, and mine's ugly enough to make them listen. At one point, he looked at me closely. You know this might break your son's heart. Seeing her mask ripped away in front of everyone. It's going to be brutal. My chest tightened. I'd rather break his heart once than watch her bleed him dry for years. The night grew late. The diner emptied. Marcus lit a cigarette in the parking lot, the ember glowing in the humid Charleston dark. You remind me of my mother, he said unexpectedly. She would have done the same thing. Fought like hell to protect me. I almost smiled. Then let's make sure we don't fail. Saturday morning dawned heavy and gray. I spent the early hours walking through my house, touching the furniture as though grounding myself. The photographs on the mantel, Michael as a boy, his gap-toothed smile beaming at the camera, stared back at me. I whispered a promise to those pictures. I will not let her destroy you. By noon, my phone was buzzing with calls from the florist, the caterer, the venue coordinator, all frantic, all demanding to know why the bride's family hadn't returned their messages about unpaid balances. I let every call go to voicemail. It was cruel, maybe, but cruelty was the only language Sarah Collins understood. Michael called next. His voice was tight with stress. Mom, something weird's happening. All the vendors are calling Emily about payments. She's saying she never told them her family was handling anything. Do you know what's going on? I forced a note of confusion into my tone. Oh my goodness, that does sound strange. What did Emily say? She's upset. Thinks someone's trying to sabotage the wedding. He hesitated. Mom, you didn't... I let out a soft gasp. Just enough hurt to sting. Michael Thompson, are you accusing your mother of sabotaging your wedding after everything I've done to make this day perfect? No, I didn't mean... Emily's just stressed. People say things when they're under pressure. I softened my voice. Don't worry, sweetheart. It's probably just a mix-up. The important thing is you're marrying the woman you love. I hung up, my hand trembling. The lie tasted bitter on my tongue, but the truth would be bitterer still. Soon he would know. At 1 o'clock, I met Marcus near the back entrance of the Bellamy estate. He leaned against his truck, adjusting his tie with an awkwardness that almost made me laugh. You ready? He asked. As ready as I'll ever be. He handed me a manila folder. Backup copies. Just in case. I slipped it into my purse, the weight of the evidence heavy against my side. Remember, I said, wait for my signal. Not before. Not after. He nodded. When you text me, it's showtime. For a long moment, we just stood there. the humid air thick between us. Then Marcus offered his hand. To unlikely alliances. I shook it, my grip steady. To justice. As I walked away, I thought about the strange twist of fate that had brought me here. A widow and a betrayed lover, teaming up like conspirators in a Southern Gothic play. The truth was, I didn't trust Marcus completely. His anger burned hot, and I knew how easily anger could cloud judgment. But I trusted his pain, and pain, I'd learned, was sometimes the sharpest weapon of all. Inside the estate, the guests were beginning to gather. The air buzzed with chatter, laughter, the clinking of champagne glasses. Somewhere in the distance, the string quartet tuned their instruments, the soft notes carrying through the halls. I stood in the shadows, hidden, my pearls cool against my throat. The stage was set, the players were in position, and when the curtain rose, Sarah Collins would finally face the audience she had so carefully deceived. This was no longer just Michael's wedding. It was the battleground where truth and lies would collide. And I was ready. The days before the wedding felt like moving through a storm no one else could see. The city sparkled as it always did. Tourists filling the cobblestone streets, carriages clattering past the historic homes, the scent of jasmine floating in the humid air. To any outsider, Charleston was the picture of Southern charm. But inside me, tension twisted like a coiled snake, ready to strike. I had a plan, and once I set it in motion, there would be no going back. On Wednesday morning, I made the first call. Mrs. Sullivan, this is Linda Thompson, mother of the groom for the Thompson-Miller wedding on Saturday. The event coordinator at the Bellamy estate greeted me warmly. She had no idea she was speaking to a woman about to burn her perfect schedule to the ground. I just wanted to let you know there's been a change, I said sweetly. The bride's family has decided to cover the final balance, after all. That's wonderful news, she said. Should I expect a payment from them directly? Oh, yes, I replied, letting my voice brim with grandmotherly delight. They'll be handling everything from here on out. Families coming together. It's such a blessing, don't you think? By the time I hung up, my palms were damp with sweat. My heart pounded like I'd just committed a crime. But this was only the beginning. Next came the florist. Mr. Delgado, this is Mrs. Thompson. I just wanted to update you. The Miller family will be covering the final floral payments directly. Isn't it lovely? They're thrilled to contribute. He thanked me profusely, jotting down the new contact number I gave him. The same burner Patricia had traced back to Sarah. By the end of the day, I had repeated the process with the caterer, the photographer, and the band. Each conversation followed the same pattern. My warm tone, their gratitude, and a phone number that led to nowhere. It was, in its own way, an act of sabotage. And when the bills went unpaid, Sarah would be standing in the wreckage. That night, I sat alone in my kitchen staring at the phone on the counter. My chest was heavy with guilt. Was I lowering myself to her level? Was I becoming a liar to catch a liar? I poured myself a glass of wine and whispered to the empty room. Sometimes you have to fight fire with fire. Whew. Thursday morning, Michael stopped by the house. Mom, you look tired, he said, kissing my cheek. His eyes were filled with concern, but beneath it I could see the glow of a man in love, oblivious to the storm about to break. It's just the wedding stress, I told him, brushing his hair back like I had when he was a boy. Emily's been nervous too, he admitted. She wants everything perfect. I think she's worried you might still be upset about not coming to the rehearsal dinner. I forced a gentle smile. Darling, I only want you to be happy. That's all I've ever wanted. He hugged me, holding on a second longer than usual. It nearly broke me. He trusted me. And in less than 48 hours, I would shatter his world. Friday evening, the phone rang again. This time, it was Emily herself. Mrs. Thompson, she said, her voice dripping honey. I just wanted to thank you for being so understanding. I know it might seem harsh not having you at the rehearsal dinner, but I need to feel comfortable tomorrow. Not at all, dear, I said smoothly. A bride should feel completely at ease on her wedding day. That's so gracious of you, she replied. "Michael mentioned you were going to Savannah for the weekend." "Classic fishing!" I matched her tone. "Yes, that's the plan. A little antiquing, maybe some time to myself." Her laugh rang down the line. "Well, I hope you have a wonderful trip. And after Michael and I are settled, maybe we could meet for lunch. I'd love to be friends." Her audacity stunned me, but I held steady. "That sounds lovely, Emily. We'll talk soon." When the call ended, I sat in silence for a long time. My reflection in the window looked back at me, weary but resolute. "This ends tomorrow," I whispered. Oh. At dawn on Saturday, I rose before the sun. The sky was gray, rain tapping softly against the windows. Wedding photographers would call it romantic. Brides would call it a nightmare. I slipped into a simple black dress, fastening the pearl necklace Emily had once admired so greedily. My grandmother's pearls. The weight of them against my skin steadied me. At 9, Marcus called from a gas station 20 minutes outside Charleston. "I'm here," he said simply. "Are you ready?" I asked. As ready as a man can be to face a ghost. I gripped the phone tighter. "Then let's do this." There was a pause. "Linda, what if your son hates you after this?" I swallowed hard. "Then at least he'll be alive, and his bank account will still be his." Sometimes being a mother means being the villain in someone else's story. He exhaled slowly. "You're tougher than you look. I've been told that before." When we hung up, a strange calm settled over me. The pieces were in place. At 11, the calls from vendors began. The florist, the caterer, the venue coordinator. Each one frantic, demanding payment. I let them all go to voicemail. My hands shook, but my voice stayed steady when Michael called. "Mom, something's going on. All the vendors are calling Emily. She says she never told them her family would handle payments. Do you know anything about this?" I forced a gasp. "Oh my goodness, that's strange. What did Emily say?" "She thinks someone's trying to sabotage the wedding," he muttered. "She's stressed. Honestly, she thinks it might be you." I let silence hang just long enough, then injected a note of hurt into my voice. "Michael Thompson, are you suggesting your mother would sabotage your wedding? After everything I've done?" No, Mom. I didn't mean Emily's just upset." I softened. "Don't worry, sweetheart. It's probably a vendor mix-up. The important thing is you're marrying the woman you love." When the call ended, I sat trembling. My lies piled high, but they were lies meant to serve the truth. At 1 o'clock, I drove toward the Bellamy estate. Spanish moss draped the ancient oaks like lace. The rain had slowed to a mist, softening the edges of the world. As I parked 2 blocks away, my phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "In position." I touched the pearls at my throat and whispered a prayer. Not for Emily, not even for myself, but for Michael. By 2 o'clock, I was hidden behind a marble column at the back of the chapel. Guests filled the pews, chatter buzzing like bees. Michael stood at the altar, his face radiant with hope. And Emily, Sarah, was moments away from her grand entrance. I pulled out my phone, my thumb hovering over Marcus's number. The stage was set. The trap was ready. And in minutes, the perfect lie would come crashing down. By the time the string quartet began the wedding march, my pulse was hammering so loud, I thought it would echo through the chapel. 300 guests rose as one, a sea of hats and pearls and expectant smiles. The double doors opened, and there she was. Emily Miller, no, Sarah Collins, stood framed in the doorway, draped in $12,000 worth of Vera Wang lace and satin. My grandmother's pearls gleamed at her throat, a cruel reminder of how far her lies had reached. Her bouquet trembled slightly in her hands, though her face remained composed, radiant. To anyone else, she looked like the picture of bridal perfection, but I saw it. The flicker in her eyes, the tension in her jaw. She knew. Somewhere deep inside, she knew the curtain was about to fall. I raised my phone and sent a single word to Marcus. Now. The chapel doors burst open again. Marcus Rivera strode down the aisle, his rumpled suit and weathered face a stark contrast to the polished crowd. His voice boomed, echoing against the vaulted ceilings. "Sarah Collins, did you really think you could hide forever?" Gasps rippled through the congregation. Heads turned. The bouquet slipped from Emily's fingers. white roses scattering across the marble floor like broken promises. Michael stepped forward instinctively. Confusion and alarm etched across his face. "Sir, you've got the wrong person. This is Emily Miller, my fiancée." Marcus laughed, a sound cold and humorless. "Emily Miller? Is that what she's calling herself now? Her real name is Sarah Collins, and she's a professional con artist." The words hit the crowd like a thunderclap. Murmurs surged, a low tide of disbelief and curiosity. Cell phones lifted, recording, snapping photos. "That's not true." Emily's voice rang out, high and desperate. She clutched Michael's arm, eyes wide with manufactured terror. "Andrew, I don't know this man. He's lying. He must be unstable." But her hands were shaking. Her perfect composure was cracking. Marcus reached into his jacket and pulled out a manila folder. He held up photographs one by one, his voice hard. "Here she is in Miami, running a credit card scam at the Ritz. Here she is in Birmingham, posing as a cancer patient to steal from a church. And here, my personal favorite, Sarah Collins leaving a hotel room in Memphis with my wallet, my watch, and the engagement ring I was stupid enough to buy her." Gasps filled the chapel. A woman in the front row crossed herself. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Michael's face turned pale. "Emily, what is he talking about?" "He's lying," she cried, her voice cracking. "Andrew, you know me. We're in love." "I love you?" Marcus barked a bitter laugh. "Love? She wouldn't know love if it bit her." "You want to know what she really thinks of you?" He pulled out his phone. "I've got recordings. Want to hear what she called you?" Emily's eyes widened in panic. "No." Marcus pressed play. Her voice poured through the speakers. Unmistakable. The pathetic mama's boy, Mark. His mother's already given us over 40 grand. He's worth at least 200,000, maybe more. The room erupted. Shocked murmurs swelled into outrage. Guests turned toward Emily with looks of disgust, disbelief, fascination. Michael staggered back as though struck. You called me that. It's out of context," she shrieked. "Andrew, please. He's twisting everything. Context." His voice cracked, then grew stronger. "You called my mother a lonely old bat. You mocked everything she's done for us. You said you loved me. Was that a lie, too?" Tears welled in her eyes. For the first time, I couldn't tell if they were real or another performance. "It started as a job," she whispered, trembling. "Just another mark. But then I thought maybe I could make it real." Michael's voice cut her off, sharp as glass. "Real, with fake names, fake jobs, fake childhood memories. What was real about us?" The guests were no longer whispering. They were recording, streaming, capturing every second of the spectacle. The minister looked shell-shocked, clutching his Bible like it might anchor him in the chaos. Emily's gaze darted around the chapel, searching for an exit, for an ally, and then her eyes found mine. Her face twisted. Recognition bloomed. "You!" she hissed, pointing across the room. "This was you." Every head turned. Suddenly, I was no longer hidden. Michael's eyes widened. "Mom, what are you doing here? You said you were in Savannah." I stepped out from behind the column, straightening my pearls with deliberate calm. "I lied, sweetheart. Something I learned from watching the experts." Emily's voice rose to a shriek. "She's jealous. She never wanted you to be happy. She hired this man to destroy our wedding because she wants to control your life forever. It was a clever play, the oldest mother-in-law stereotype in the book. And for a moment I saw doubt flicker across Michael's face. But Marcus wasn't finished. "Mrs. Thompson didn't hire me," he said firmly. I volunteered. "I've been hunting Sarah for 2 years. And here's the recording of our conversation 3 weeks ago. Her laughing about how easy it is to manipulate desperate mothers and their devoted sons." The audio spilled into the hushed chapel, Sarah's voice clear. "The old bat is so desperate for grandchildren. She'll believe anything. And the son, complete mama's boy. All I have to do is cry about my tragic past, and he writes another check." Michael's eyes went wide. He turned to Emily, Sarah, and I saw the exact moment the illusion shattered. His shoulders slumped, his expression hollow. You used us," he whispered. "No." Sarah lunged toward him, grasping at his hands. "Andrew, listen to me. I can explain. Explain what—" His voice was deadly quiet. "Explain how you laughed at my mother while spending her money. Explain how you planned to rob me blind and disappear." Her body sagged, the fight draining from her. She looked around wildly, but every exit was blocked by curious guests leaning in, recording her downfall. Finally, she dropped her bouquet and straightened her shoulders, defiant to the end. "You think you've won. You've ruined him. He'll never trust another woman again. Congratulations, Mrs. Thompson. You've destroyed your son." Her words cut deep, slicing through my resolve. For a fleeting moment, guilt pierced me. Had I saved him, or scarred him beyond repair? But Michael surprised me. His jaw tightened, his eyes fierce. "No, she didn't ruin me." "You did?" "My mother was protecting me. You were destroying me." Gasps and murmurs surged again. Some guests even clapped softly, as though cheering a courtroom drama. "Emily," Sarah snarled, her mask completely gone now. "This isn't over. I have friends, connections. You'll regret this." Marcus stepped forward, calm and unflinching. "Actually, it is over. The FBI's been very interested in your activities. Fake social security number, fraudulent employment, wire fraud. It's all on file. They should be here any minute." Almost on cue, 2 men in dark suits entered the chapel, flashing badges. "Sarah Collins," the taller agent announced. "You're under arrest for fraud, identity theft, and violation of federal banking regulations." Gasps filled the chapel, cell phones lifted higher. A bride in a $12,000 gown was being handcuffed in front of 300 horrified guests. Sarah thrashed, her voice shrill. "This is harassment. I haven't done anything wrong. You'll hear from my lawyer." But her protests were drowned out by the buzz of recording devices, the murmur of disbelief, the snapping of photographs. As the agents marched her down the aisle, pearls still gleaming at her throat, I felt a strange mixture of triumph and sorrow. Michael stood frozen at the altar, pale and shaken, his wedding crumbling around him, and I, his mother, stood in the shadows, knowing I had saved him, but also knowing the cost would be heavy. Sometimes love isn't gentle. Sometimes love is a blade. And that day, I had wielded it. The chapel doors closed behind Sarah Collins, the sound of her protests fading into the humid Charleston air. For a long moment, silence held the room like a vice. 300 guests sat frozen, eyes wide, phones still raised. The minister stood at the altar, looking as though seminary had never prepared him for this particular scenario. Michael remained rooted in place, staring at the spot where his bride had just been handcuffed and escorted away. His tuxedo hung heavy on his frame. His shoulders slumped as though the weight of betrayal had physically crushed him. Finally, he turned toward the crowd. His voice was hoarse but steady. "Well," he said, the word echoing in the stunned hush. "This is awkward." A ripple of uneasy laughter spread through the pews. It was brittle, fragile, but it broke the spell. People began shifting, standing, whispering to one another. The organist fiddled nervously with her sheet music. Michael ran a hand through his hair, his face pale but determined. "The wedding is obviously canceled, but the reception is already paid for. So if anyone wants dinner and an open bar, God knows I could use a drink." This time the laughter was more genuine. A few guests clapped. Others shook their heads in disbelief, gathering their things. The air was thick with the buzzing energy of people desperate to recount the story later. I stayed hidden for a moment longer, my heart pounding. Then Michael's eyes found me across the room. He didn't speak, didn't move, just looked at me. A storm of emotions swirling in his gaze. Gratitude, anger, confusion, shame, love. Slowly he stepped down from the altar and walked toward me. The crowd parted instinctively, like the Red Sea. When he reached me, he stopped. For a long time, we simply stared at each other. "Mom?" he said finally, his voice raw. "We need to talk." I nodded, my throat tight. "Yes, but first." He reached up and unclasped the pearls from around his neck, the same pearls Sarah had flaunted minutes before. His hands trembled as he placed them back into mine. "These belong to you," he whispered. The familiar weight of the necklace nearly broke me. My voice cracked. "No, sweetheart. They belong to the woman you marry when she's worthy of them. One day, you'll give them to someone who deserves our family's trust." His eyes filled with tears. "I'm so sorry, Mom, for not believing you, for choosing her over you, for being such a fool." "You weren't a fool," I said softly, straightening his tie with the same gesture I'd used since he was a boy. "You were in love. Or at least you thought you were. And love makes us vulnerable. That's not foolish. That's human." He swallowed hard, his jaw trembling. "How long did you know?" "I suspected for weeks," I admitted. "Patricia confirmed it 2 weeks ago. And Marcus, well, he volunteered when I told him where she'd be." Michael blinked. "You've been planning this all along." "I had to," I said quietly. "You never would have believed me otherwise." For a moment his face twisted with pain. Then he let out a shaky laugh. "You played chess while I was playing checkers. Sometimes mothers have to," I murmured. The reception that wasn't a reception turned out to be one of the strangest gatherings I'd ever witnessed. Without the weight of vows or rituals, people relaxed. The band abandoned wedding classics and played blues. Guests lined up at the bar, ordering doubles. Conversations flowed with a strange authenticity, as though the facade of polite society had crumbled with the bride's arrest. Michael surprised me. He worked the room with quiet grace, thanking guests for coming, apologizing for the spectacle, even cracking jokes when appropriate. I watched him from across the ballroom, my heart swelling with a different kind of pride. Not for his career or accomplishments, but for his strength in the face of humiliation. At the dessert table, I found myself staring at the 3-tiered wedding cake. Was it appropriate to eat wedding cake when there had been no wedding? I almost laughed at the absurdity. "Mrs. Thompson?" I turned. Marcus stood beside me, his tie loosened, his expression softer than I'd yet seen it. "I wanted to thank you," he said, "for giving me the chance to face her. After 2 years of chasing shadows, I never thought I'd see the day." I shook his hand firmly. "I should be the one thanking you. Without your help, she would have walked away with my son's future in her pocket." He studied me for a moment. "You know, most mothers would have just begged their sons to walk away. They would have failed. You didn't beg. You planned. You fought. Any mother would have done the same," I said, though I knew it wasn't entirely true. "No," Marcus said quietly. "Most wouldn't. You played chess, while the rest of us played checkers." Later, Michael joined me at the edge of the dance floor. He handed me a glass of champagne, his eyes tired but clearer. "You look like you're having second thoughts," he said gently. I sighed, swirling the bubbles in my glass. "I was just wondering if there might have been a kinder way, a gentler way to spare you this pain." He gave a small, rueful smile. "What would that have been?" Sitting me down and saying, "Son, your fiancé is a professional con artist." I would have laughed in your face. I would have thought you were jealous. Exactly what Sarah claimed. "You're probably right," I admitted. "You know what changed my mind?" he asked. "It wasn't Marcus. It wasn't even the recordings. It was watching her face when she realized you'd outplayed her. For the first time, the mask slipped, and I saw her for what she really was." I swallowed hard. "What did you see?" "Cold calculation," he said simply. "And for a moment, respect. She underestimated you completely. Thought you were just a lonely old woman desperate to keep her son. She had no idea she was trying to con someone sharper than she was." I shook my head. "Not sharper, just more motivated." He smiled faintly. "Mom, you orchestrated the exposure of a professional con artist in front of 300 people, using her own ex-partner and the FBI. That wasn't just maternal instinct. That was strategy." We stood in silence for a moment, watching guests mingle under the chandeliers. "I have a confession," Michael said finally. "Oh, part of me is relieved. Not about the public disaster, but something always felt off. Sometimes when I looked at her, it was like she was trying to remember who she was supposed to be." "Why didn't you say anything?" I asked softly. "Because I was 32, and I'd never been in love before. I thought if I questioned it too much, it would all fall apart." I took his hand. "Oh, sweetheart, that doesn't make you pathetic. That makes you human, and humans want to be loved. There's no shame in that." He squeezed my hand. "Thank you, Mom, for everything, for seeing through her, For saving me, even when I didn't want to be saved. You're welcome, I whispered. But next time you fall in love, maybe let me meet her sooner. He laughed softly. Next time, I'm running a full background check. Now that might be a little extreme, I teased. After today, I don't think so. Besides, I've learned something important. What's that? Never underestimate a Thompson woman. My throat tightened with tears I refused to shed. Your grandmother would have been proud. He lifted his glass. To justice. Served ice cold, with a side of public humiliation. I clinked mine against his. To family, and to knowing when to fight for the people you love. As the music swelled and laughter filled the hall, I realized something profound. Despite the lies, the betrayal, the public spectacle, I was exactly where I belonged, beside my son, protecting him, loving him. Sometimes the best weddings are the ones that never happen. Thank you so much for watching this story until the end. If there were any shortcomings, I sincerely apologize. Your support means the world and gives me strength to keep sharing more heartfelt stories.